What is happening, boys and girls? James from Sigma Strength and Physique. Got a chest day today. I call it a pec day because the emphasis is working our pecs, and most people have trouble with that. So we're going to go through some really vital cues, tips to actually working your pecs and not your delts and a whole bunch of other things. You're lucky enough to see me do an activation which is warming up my pecs and I'm having a laugh, and warming up my middle traps. So later on when I'm benching, I can retract my shoulders, but you'll be even luckier enough to look at our Sigma logo for a minute as I talk about boring stuff that you need to understand. So people talk about how do I construct a good chest session. So let's assume that is going to be a chest session. Not arguing should we put chest in with back or whatever it is. We grow from mechanical tension, so we grow from getting stronger on good movements. So we need to be able to fit in the good movements, which is going to be generally some sort of press, bench press, incline press, bars, dumbbells, whatever. We need to prioritize those pretty early on in the session when we're the freshest and strongest. Saying that, we want to do some sort of activation, so we don't want to cook ourselves doing flies and that sort of stuff. So the way we construct it is do an activation, something around 50 or 60% intensity that works the kind of muscles that you need to stabilize and work during that big movement. Make sure you improve on your top set, so don't cook yourself doing 50 sets to warm up. And this will be one of my very light warm-up sets. You can see what I'm trying to do is keep my pecs up. So whatever's at the top of the movement of the press is what you're working. So at the top of the press, if my delts are higher than my pecs, I'm probably using more delts. Now there's a few exclusions to that based on the size of your rib cage. I've got Mr. Gregory here sort of warming up, and I'm working really hard on him, telling him to keep the shoulder blades tucked in. And the same deal, not rounding out. So he rounds out a little bit at the top. You can see me sort of tapping on the chest saying keep the chest up, which means shoulder blades tucked in and not sort of roll out and contract at the top. So he's doing a pretty good job there, sort of pretty close to his top weight. And looking at the top weight is all that matters. You see a bit of a leg kick there. But all that really matters is going to be your top 1 or 2 sets. So what I mean by that is I'd rather you do 3 or 4 reps to work your way up on a moderate weight and then PB your top set, rather than do 4 sets of 10 reps on each, tax yourself, get to your top set, and then you shag. So volume does not make up for intensity being the weight you move. So I think this would be my top set. So that's the heaviest dumbbells we've got. You see what I'm working hard on doing. It's always hard on the top set. Is making sure I've got my shoulder blades tucked in at the top of the movement. I'm still trying to keep my chest up. So nice big stretch, and you sort of see the pec fibre stretching on the way down. And as I come up, not letting shoulders roll out, digging my heels into the ground, digging my mid traps into the bench, stabilizing, and just getting a couple of assisted reps there. And that's really the idea, guys. I mean, if you can get assistance on any movement, assuming you've got some training history and, like it's not your first time ever doing weights, you don't need to go beyond failure, but take it. Like that is one of the biggest, it's probably the thing that stops people from progressing, is simply not getting stronger. So if you can get an extra sort of quarter rep at the bottom where you're going to be weakest, and that allows you to continue the set by doing the top half of the movement that you can do on your own where you're a bit stronger, just in virtue of getting that assistance at the bottom, then have at it. That's how you improve. So again, here, sort of a different angle, just to see, trying to keep that chest up, trying not to sort of roll out. Because remember, guys, it's about tension onto the working muscles. So it's all great to throw around heavy dumbbells, but if that load is going onto your delts and going Christ knows where, you may as well go lighter, because, if you're using 30 kilo dumbbells with shit form, maybe 15, 20 kilos of that weight's going to the pec, and you risk being injured and you look like a dickhead. Whereas if you drop down to 15, 20s to get your form right, you don't risk injury. So the way I structure it is 2 top sets, generally around about the 8 rep range. I think I've got 10 on the first. If I feel like I can get close to sort of 8 to 10 on the second, I'll stay on that weight. And then for my third set here, I drop down to, I think, the 45, so drop down a few kilos just to try and stay in that kind of 8 rep range, a bit of assistance there, and really just work on keeping those pecs up, shoulder blades tucked in. So, I mean, honestly, 3 working sets of that intensity. And I've got to give you a bit of a heads up warning on the nutsack cam was on today. I realised when I was editing this video, so all apologies for those who don't like seeing that, and for those who do, then this is your moment. But so we've gone from an incline dumbbell bench, which obviously allows us to move a shit ton of weights in a pretty good position. You see what I'm showing the other guys is the lineup. So the lineup, you want to have that bar splitting across your upper arm. Wherever your upper arm is pointing is generally going to be where you're working. So if you follow my upper arm path, it's moving right towards my upper pec, where if I was to drop my elbows in towards my side and followed my upper arm would go more into the delt. So about that position is where you want to be. Any higher, you're kind of uncomfortable, like your elbows will be up too high and you're sort of uncomfortable. Any lower, you're going to be sort of moving more towards your delts. And see there, I'm showing you keeping the chest up. Again, whatever's at the top of the movement is what we're going to be biasing. So you don't just use delts if your form's shit, and you don't just use pecs if your form's great, but it is a spectrum, and we are trying to bodybuild here, and we are on this particular day trying to work pecs. So I'm working on him here. He's doing a pretty good job there, keeping the pecs up. Elbows are in a pretty good position. If you follow his upper arm, you can see it's in line, and just give me a little bit of assistance at the top. It's hard to spot on this one. It hasn't got the greatest profile, but it gets sort of heavier as you get weaker in that sort of short range. It's just a side-on view to sort of see what the back's doing here. I think we get to see a few reps. Similar sort of principle, probably end up doing two top sets around that, somewhere between the 6 and 12 rep range. The range doesn't matter that much as long as you're getting stronger. Saying that, I'd rather do 8 than 12 because 12's boring, and it's good to feel strong. The same deal, it is just about keeping those pecs up. So I'm driving my upper back into the bench, trying not to roll out too much. I need a bit of help. Having a good spotter makes a world of difference, where he sort of knows how much help to give you and how far you can go with it. And then just really controlling that eccentric. So on the way down, rather than just letting it go when the set was done, really just trying to control that bit down where you are stronger, because of course you're always stronger in the eccentric than the concentric. So basically when you're finished, in layman's terms, once you can't push anymore, you still can actually control the weight down, and that all adds to your results. So here it's getting a little bit heavy for him. He's sort of doing partials, but it's probably better than nothing. But again, like, he's still keeping his technique pretty good. And that's another good job of a spotter, is to actually sort of cue on the technique. Tell him, look, I've got you. Drive your mid traps into the bench. And I think we turned ball sack count on for this set as well. And this is probably going to be my last set, I reckon. I generally just try and do 2 to 3 top sets. This looks like it might be a bit of a drop down set. So essentially, like I said, try and improve on your top set on whatever given rep range you choose, and then if you think you can get within that rep range again, go for it. I generally prefer to sort of drop it down. I've got a pretty good idea where my top set is, so it's not like I'm going to do my top set and then go, oh shit, actually I can probably go up from there. So I've just got this little thing in my head about not doing the same weight and the same reps twice. So if I can do 100 for 8, I just don't want to do 108 again, 100 for 8 again, or definitely don't want to do 100 for 7. So I'd rather just drop the weight down and, I don't know, try and get some extra reps. Just a little quirk that I have, and probably in the real world it doesn't really make a difference, because again, the top set is what matters, because the body understands mechanical tension. So what it understands is how much load you're putting on the muscle, how much torque you're putting on the joints. That's what's going to make the muscle respond and grow, assuming you're hitting it in its full range of motion. When I say full range of motion, that's going to be different for every person, and there are caveats on that, so we'll worry about that another time. But just to let you know, I'm not one of those idiots that just says, work your full range of motion. There's a lot more to it than that. So we're doing a fun drop set here by the looks of it, and these generally turn to shit pretty quick. So this is actually a fair bit of volume for this. So the reason I start with the dumbbell bench is because it requires the most stability. It's probably the most weight we're going to move. So we did a couple of sets on the incline dumbbells, and then we moved to something more braced like this. We're more supported. We don't have to balance as much. The machine sort of converges in nicely, which is what our pecs do. So I think I would much rather be doing that second rather than that first, and then trying to stabilise while I'm pretty cooked. We just throw some dips in here. I think I end up going heavy on this particular day. I've just started reintroducing these into my training. I sort of rate them a bit. Well, I rate them quite a lot actually, but I'm just mindful of shoulders. You can sort of see my left shoulder rotates in a little bit and rolls in. I've had a torn rotator cuff. Being an old bastard, I've had every injury under the sun. But what I thought today, I thought felt all right. I might try and build the weight up a little bit, which is unusual after doing that many sort of drop sets or that much volume on the press earlier. But it felt pretty good. So I started on 20 just for a few. Thought we'll go up to 30, see how it feels. If I felt like 30 was going to be my top set for about sort of 6 to 8, I'd probably do it. But I think I jumped up and knocked out 2 or 3 and thought, I feel pretty strong here. So rather than cook myself on this weight, or maybe I'm wrong here. No, this is the one where I actually thought, bugger it, I'll go nuts. Then I climbed off actually. So I stopped around about 5 or 6. Still felt strong, and we kept just going up. And this is pretty unusual. I chucked about 50 kilos on there, which is really just a dick measuring contest. I just sort of felt strong, and the boys were sort of having a bit of a look. So I thought we'll pop up and see what we can get on 50. But these are the kind of things that if you don't know what your limitations are and you're not good with the form, particularly on something like this where the balance is where you really do need to stabilise quite a lot through your scapula on this. But I thought I'll have a crack, and I know my body pretty well. I ended up getting sort of 3 partials. I don't lock out on these. There's no point in locking out. We're not trying to work the elbow joint. We're trying to work the pecs. So I tend to keep load on the pecs. So I try and keep my scapula reasonably still, and I like to have my body weight forward. So I try not to pull back. You'll find that when you get tired, you're going to want to pull back to help you up. But try and keep your body weight forward over the pecs. You can see the pecs, pec fibers working there. And just even little pulses, like I'm still trying to hit that sort of length into sort of mid-range. And obviously if you can get higher, that's great. So if you look at the structure of the movement, we did a quick activation movement at the start. Then you got to listen to me talk for a minute. And then we did what I'd call our 3 money movements. So it was an incline bench, then it was a supported chest press, hammer strength incline press. Then we did a heavy dip, and now we're moving into, I guess, what we'd call our metabolic component of it. Now, essentially, muscles grow 2 ways. They primarily grow. My form is actually shit on this, and that's why I'll go through. You see, I want those cables a little bit lower. I want the cable where it's actually coming from to be down 1, so it literally tracks my upper arms. Everything's in a straight line. But you can see it's slightly too high. As a result, I'm not super comfortable on it, but I was too oblivious or lazy to change it. But it's not a golden rule at all. Just this particular movement, I do like to make sure everything's in line, and just that it helps you be able to sort of look in the mirror and actually make sure that your arms are moving, because wherever your upper arm travels across is pretty much where you're going to bias. So if my elbows drop down, I'm probably going to bias the middle to the lower part of the pecs. If my arms are a little bit higher, I'll bias probably the upper pec a little bit more. So you can actually select which part you do bias. Now, you don't work purely the upper pec or mid pec. You do work all of your pecs for most movements, but again, you can bias. Anyone tells you can't is fibbing to you. So this is what I call the metabolic stuff, where we pick a few different movements and just keep going. So the movements we're doing here is we're doing a cable, back supported cable one. So anytime you can get braced, great. So sitting down. And we're just doing like an isometric where we're essentially just crushing this foam roller. And as easy as it looks, it is actually dread. It's actually the worst thing ever. I'm just crushing the shit out of it, trying to keep, again, your hands up around about pec height. And so it's you're actually very strong in that position. So it allows you to keep working the pecs. So going from something that works the pecs in the shortened range, which was the cable fly. So when we bring our bicep into pec, we're really working that shortened range. We went to something that's just sort of generally like an isometric, so it's probably working kind of a bit of everything. And this, I'm trying to spend time in the length and range. This is just like a nothing movement in the sense it's not really a fly, it's not really a press. What I'm trying to do is with control, my wrist cocks to the weight stays within my sort of plan in my body. I'm just trying to get into that length and stretched range. So it's really giving the pecs a bit of a stretch, just staying down there. There's no particular rhyme or reason with it. I probably should get a bit of a plan with it. But it's basically just trying to get whatever's left in the pecs, because remember, the pecs are always stronger, or every muscle's always stronger in the lengthened range. So when you've fried it on everything, and then you've nailed your cable flyers, which are a shortened sort of range movement, you still got a little bit left in the lengthen. So it's a nice little combo where we go from this one, which is biasing the shortened range, into that horrible foam roller thing, which just basically just works the pecs in general. And over to something that sort of biases the length into mid-range. It's a nice little combo and allows you to keep going and just ensures you're not, I guess, becoming redundant in the sense of just throwing two or three random pec movements together with no particular rhyme or reason. Because again, we're in the gym. To a degree, science has a bearing on why and what we should do. So it makes sense to me that we actually have some understanding of why we put some movements together. Generally sort of trying to keep moving on this stuff. So we call it metabolic because, again, it's working it's probably stimulating the muscles in a different way. So it's not mechanical tension, the weight's light. So it's just pumping like a whole bunch of goodness, growth hormone, lactic acid, just all sorts of sarcoplasmic shit into the muscles that anecdotally, and I think there's a bit of scientific evidence to it, but I would need to look that up, says that it does help the muscles grow, but you won't grow on this without having the heavy stuff. So the other reason we do this stuff is, look, if we want to do 6 or 7 movements, it's going to take us 4 hours to do 4 working sets of this and 4 working sets of that lengthen thing. So you pick 3 movements that don't have great potential for growth in and of their own, throw them together after you've done your good heavy stuff. And that's really how you construct the session. But you can see the whole premise, or the whole idea of this video is keeping that chest up. That's what it's all about, keeping the pecs up high, shoulder blades retracted. And from there, there is not much more to it, guys. It's just simply about getting stronger, being consistent, and definitely watching these videos and subscribing. All the best. Get massive.